Okay, good evening, everyone. We will get started. John will turn down the microphone just a little bit. And just welcome to summer. I am just really excited about our wonderful weather. This is great. Yes, I agree. We need to applaud summer. Absolutely. So we always start with an invocation. It'll be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. So I just ask you all to stand now. And Councilman Ed Pace is going to lead us in both.
Good evening, everyone. Will you pray with me, please? Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for gathering us together on this beautiful evening. We thank you for this gathering of conservative folks who are passionate about governing the way that you want us to govern based on our Constitution. We ask that you would open our minds and our hearts to the things that we're going to hear tonight and the things that we're going to learn, and that you send us out of here just on fire for doing your will, leading our community, our state, and our nation. In Jesus' name, amen. Will you join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, Ed. Okay. Whoops, John already clicked that for me. First of all, we'll go through upcoming events, and I want y'all to know that I put a piece of lilac paper on your tables. That's for keeping notes, because we have some good upcoming events coming. If you need a pen, I have a few extra on the table back there. And so we have the Ponderosa Women tomorrow, and they meet at 11:30. And their topic, they're really focusing on human trafficking because it's really becoming a horrendous issue. And so that is where they are focusing. And they meet at the Red Lion River Inn. So that's the one on Division by the river. Okay, we have Friday morning breakfast. And Rob Chase, who's here somewhere, he hosts those early Friday mornings. And he has Chris Cargill of the Washington Policy Center on Friday. And that'll be followed on the 19th by the City of Spokane Police Chief, Craig Meidel. And then on May 25th, he has the three people that we really need to get on our Spokane City Council. And that's Tim Benn, Jenny Graham, and Tony Keepy. So if you're an early riser, that is probably one of the best meetings to go to really, you're able to interact and talk to folks and things that way. So you get a lot more than just them presenting, because you do get to ask questions and have some one-on-one time. So definitely of value to attend Friday morning breakfast. Tim Benn is unable to be with us this evening, but he has his campaign kickoff coming. So he's one of the people that we need to make sure that we support and get into the City of Spokane Council. Now, some of you live in the city and most of you don't, but I'm not kidding you guys. If we don't take an effective part in that election and see what we can do as far as straightening out that city council, they're going to creep all over this county. And we're going to end up being like King County. So it's up to you to really support these guys and start turning the number of conservatives that are on the council and getting some logical thinking in there. Because otherwise you're going to have bike trails and no roads, and you're going to have trees that have more rights than you, and it's just not a good situation. So definitely support Tim. Now I got to tell you, he has a suggested donation there of $25, and he, that's covering the food also. So like if there's two of you coming, that'd just about cover the food for two of you. So think of your donation in that way, and be a little generous, please. Then we have the Citizens Alliance for Property Rights. We call them CAPER. And they have a lot of issues going on, and they're not a political arm per se, but they are definitely for property right freedoms. And so they have Steve Bush. He's an expert on predatory animal management and water law litigation. Now, Gloria sent me what he's talking about, and on this meeting he's going to be talking about rewilding. So in other words, introducing the wild animals into our area. So Steve shares how rewilding advocates target private property, methods for tracking rewilding through land abandonment, urbanization, and federal land grab statistics, as well as a look at the global nature of rewilding. Steve's presentation also includes how to identify green decoy groups, as well as the important issue of water governance, mandates and control mechanisms flowing down to states and local municipalities from the UN, integrated water resource management, and 2030 sustainable development agreements. While the attack on property rights seemed multifaceted and complicated, he concludes his presentation with some good news about encouraging actions already taken by the Trump administration intended to protect the rights of rural landowners and rural communities. He will also introduce an overlooked legal strategy that, if employed, could derail the entire agenda. So again, write it down, North Spokane Library on May 25th. Okay? Am I going too fast for anyone? Okay. And then the Spokane County GOP has their Lincoln Day dinner on June 3rd. And our next movie night is June 14th, and I don't know what we're going to be doing, so that's, you get the question mark. I think you get it most of the time, so we'll see what happens. And on the 24th of June, at the Greyhound Racetrack, Greyhound Event Center, we're doing our second Spirit of America rally. And this is the rally that allows people to really come and celebrate the election of 2016, the Trump presidency. It's safe. Having it in a private venue, we can keep protesters and that type of thing away. And it just makes a really fun time, and you can hoot and holler and have a good time, and we're going to get some good speakers there for you, and it's just a time to really let your hair down and celebrate without worrying about some of the objectionable people in your face. Okay, from there we go to our open mic time. Now, I do have a scheduled guest at this time, and then after Laura speaks, anyone who has something to say is welcome to come up here. We have some orange flashing lines here, and if you stay within that area, you'll be on the video. And most of you know we have a YouTube station channel. It's youtube.com/NW Grassroots, and you'll be able to see not only tonight's but other presentations. So as I said, we have a special guest. I guess it's not going to work for me. Her name is Lara Hastings. She's the Advancement Director for Eastern Washington for the Freedom Foundation. Prior to joining the Freedom Foundation, she was with the Building Industry Association of Washington. She lives in Washington in Pasco with what I call the 3 C's. Her husband is Colin, and she has 2 sons, Cleet and Cale. So she lives with 3 C's. So I want you all to welcome Lara, and she's going to give us a good understanding of the Freedom Foundation's mission and what they're doing. So welcome. There you go.
Good evening, everyone.
We need a microphone.
I'm pretty loud.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay. Good evening.
Yellow.
Is it turned on?
Yes, I turned it on.
Hello?
And it's saying low battery.
go. Is that better? Good evening. I drove up from Pasco this morning. I saw the cover of the Spokesman Review. Everything's fine in the Tri-Cities. It looked like they were freaking out a little bit. There was some sort of incident out at Hanford, but we're not glowing in the Tri-Cities yet, unless you plan to move there from Portland or Seattle, and then, yes, it's terrible. Everything's glowing. Don't move there. But you guys are welcome to move there. Everything's really fine. But if we can freak out and keep them where they are, then that makes me happy. Expanding workers' options and standing up to bullying is what the Freedom Foundation has been focused on for the last 5 years, since Tom McCabe took over the Freedom Foundation. Our mission is to advance individual liberty, free enterprise, and limited accountable government. We have a vision of a day when opportunity, responsible self-governance, and free markets flourish in Washington State because its citizens understand and cherish the principles of which freedom is derived. Sounds pretty simple. In Washington State, it's a lot harder to achieve than it sounds like, but that is our goal. And we've honed in on one major part of Washington State that we feel will really move all of our agenda issues forward. Public sector unions is what we've decided to focus on for a variety of reasons. Union Transparency and Reform Project is what we've had in place for the last 5 years. Tom McCabe took over what was then known as the Evergreen Freedom Foundation, and at that time they were pretty broad-based. They were dealing with property rights issues, they were dealing with charter schools, the education system, and when Tom McCabe came in, he took a look at everything and decided to drill down to what the root of all of it was, and it was a certain sector of people having way too much money that was obligatorily given to them by public sector unions. So if you are a person who likes big government, the more people you can hire, the more people you can take money from involuntarily, the more you can fund your agenda, blah, blah, blah. So Tom McCabe decided that's what he was going to go after, is public sector unions, and really drill down on their effectiveness to fund everything that, in our opinion, is bad, that gets pushed upon Washington State residents. So it's important to note that private unions are not really our focus. The difference being is that private unions were designed to kind of give bargaining power between the employees and the owner and profit share, if you will. And kind of establish that link so that they work harder, maybe the owner will share their money, that's the basis of unions. Public sector unions are different because there really should be no profits, right? There should be no profits that anybody's sharing, and so there's really no need for a union to then try to share those profits, because really the profits are coming from taxpayers, and so if they're looking for more money, it's going to come from all of you. And that's what you see all the time in Washington State, is collective bargaining, issues being pushed to fund bigger government and more state employees. This, and some of you may have seen our television ads. When Tom McCabe took over the Union Transparency and Reform Project, he decided to hone in on one specific union, and that is SEIU, the Service Employees International Union. They represent child care workers and healthcare workers in Washington State. Neither of those parties of which asked to be part of a union. It was an agreement between Christine Gregoire and SEIU. And SEIU went to 9 states, 9 of the most liberal governors in the United States at that time, and said, we want to create a fake union to then funnel money back to you. Are you okay with that? And we're going to go after child care, and we're going to go after home health care. And the way that they're state employees is that they receive Medicare benefits for taking care of people, family members or children. And so from that, we will take money and then give it back to you. Is that okay with you? And Gregoire said, of course that's fine with me. We'll do that. And so they did that along with 9 other states. They were run by liberal governors, and that's how a lot of these people that we're now talking to got into SEIU in the first place. This is Brad Boardman. Just to give you an example, he takes care of his sister. He has since his parents were unable to. His sister-in-law's Medicare and Medicaid account pay Brad to take care of her, but Brad, up until we knocked on his door and told him that there was a Supreme Court case in 2014 saying he did not have to be part of a union, which the union's not telling him about, Brad was paying about $700 a year to a union he didn't know he was a part of and who did absolutely nothing for him. And so we talked to Brad. He signed the opt-out along with a bunch of other people that we've contacted who have signed the opt-out. And that's how we're kind of pushing this groundswell of letting people know that there's this Supreme Court case where they have the option, and just opening people's eyes to how that union was imposed on them in the first place, and trying to kind of flip the script and tell the real story of the people being affected. The story of the Freedom Foundation, according to other people, is that we're funded by outside millionaires, they always like to say, which are the Murdochs and the Koch brothers. And yes, we get some money from them, but the majority of our money come from people just like you who give us $15 out of every month as a donation, or people like Brad Boardman, who we knocked on the door of and talked to him, and he was just really grateful for knowing that he did have the option to save $700 a year and take care of his sister, and everything was fine. He got harassed just like all of the people who opt out do. The SEIU shows up at their door, they harass them, they tell them they can't get out, they narrow the window on when you can opt out, and so now it's, I think, December 26th through January 2nd, when nobody's in the office anyway or processing paperwork. And so it's a chess game between us and the unions, but we're smarter, so we'll win. It's just figuring out where to move next, and they're figuring out how to make it harder for us to give people the freedom of choice. So to dovetail off of this, you may have been aware of Initiative 1501 that was passed, unfortunately, November of this year. It was Trojan horsed to the voters of Washington State, because unfortunately I don't think a lot of people, probably everybody in this room does, but I don't think a lot of other people actually read what they vote for before they vote for it. And so 1501 was under the guise of protecting seniors and predatory actions against seniors and getting that information and using it incorrectly, which of course is a bad thing, but it wasn't what 1501 was about at all. It was about keeping us from getting the lists of state employees who are registered child care providers or home health care providers to be able to go to their door and tell them they had the option to opt out. And it was public record, except for now, because of 1501, it's not public record anymore. And so we have no other way of getting that list to be able to tell those people what their options are. So that was what 1501 was. SEIU funded the entire thing. It was all about keeping us from their list, and we're fighting it in court because the constitutionality of just the initiative itself is questionable. So we are fighting that, but that's what that whole thing was about, is keeping us from getting to people like Brad and 60% of the other people who opted out once they were told they have the option. Everywhere we go, we get protesters, and so in Tom McCabe's eyes, that means we're doing something really good. This was when we had Steve Forbes come to Bellevue and speak to donors. We always have protesters with signs about workers' rights and attacking workers and attacking their privacy, when all we're really trying to do is tell people what their constitutional rights are based on the Supreme Court decision of 2014. SEIU has done absolutely nothing to tell people of their rights. And it's interesting to me that instead of putting all their energy in protesting and all of this, they could put that energy into making themselves the obvious choice, right? So if you're pushing people to know that they have the choice of being in a union or not being in a union, I would think the union's energy would be like, well, of course you want to choose us because we're offering continuing education or better benefits or blah, blah, blah. But that's not at all what they've done since we started attacking them, in their opinion. They have just bussed people all over. They bus people to Wenatchee. They bus people everywhere we go to protest against what we're trying to do. This is another person, and this is another branch of what we're trying to do. This gentleman is in Waterville, which is in the central part of the state, north-ish. The WEA is kind of our issue here, and just trying to get where we worked with the Waterville School District. They decertified from the Washington Education Association and formed their own teachers union. School districts can decertify from the WEA and not be represented by the WEA and have their own teachers union where the decisions made stay local and it's not going to Olympia or wherever the WEA's office is. I think it's in Olympia probably. And so Waterville has done this along with a lot of other schools, all on the east side of the state, of course. But what it does is localize school decisions and school district decisions as they should be, and it avoids what we had in Pasco last year, where the WEA comes over, sees kind of a vulnerable school district, gets everybody all worked up, convinces the teachers they should strike. The teachers strike, the parents are mad, there's hurt feelings, and then WEA bails. And they're back in Olympia, leaving whatever city they got all riled up to just kind of fester in the mess they made, and was anything really resolved. And so what we're telling these school districts is, you can pull together your money, you can hire a lawyer with that money, you can have all the benefits of that the WEA was providing you, except for your decisions are based on what's best for your community and not what's best for the WEA. And so Waterville, and I think there's 4 other school districts who have done that. So since our efforts, this actually is inaccurate. The 925 is the child care membership has dropped 65%. So once we tell them they have the option to get out of their union, the majority of people jump at the chance. I had the opportunity to go door to door in a neighborhood in Spokane about 6 months ago. And it's really eye-opening because the majority of these people, child care or home health care is not their main job. It's one of 3 jobs they have. It's a very hard job, and they, for the most part, don't know that they're in a union, don't see their paycheck stubs or understand what's getting taken out of their account. And once you tell them that $60 a month could be saved if they would fill out this card to opt out, $60 a month for a lot of these people is a huge, giant deal. It's a huge deal. For a lot of these people, it's diapers that they've stressed out about buying from month to month. And so it was nice to see who we're helping, who we really are trying to help them and open their eyes to what their rights are, and that they don't have to be part of a union. We actually knocked on the door of a gentleman who was very pro-union, and so we were telling him, we're just here to let people know that they have the option to opt out. And he said, there should be no choice, which we thought was really interesting, because it's so un-American that it's just really strange to me that people have that reaction of there should be no choice, you should blindly have to do whatever someone else decided, Christine Gregoire apparently, decided you should be affiliated with. And so there are those people out there, but the majority of people are really grateful to hear with our information. So just a little comic, it's the organized bullies you got to worry about, and the government unions contributing to your pension. They don't go quietly. They don't like that we're dabbling in what they consider their money, which is actually our money that's being given to them. And so that's the deal with establishing the difference between government unions and private unions. So as we've chipped away at SEIU and their child care and their home health care, they then try other avenues. They've been trying to unionize University of Washington employees and teachers. They've been trying to unionize fast food workers in Seattle. So as we kind of chip away at one side, they're chipping away at another side, which is another one of those chess game, like where we're at, where they're at. And neither one of us, them or us, are going to go quietly. And so it's kind of just the battle is on, and who can outlast the other one, or who can really deliver that one blow that changes everything. Ideally, what our goal would be is to make Washington a right-to-work state, and give people the option of choosing. So, and in our opinion, it really is expanding workers' rights. If the union feels strongly about what they do, that's still an option. So make yourself the option that people would choose instead of making people stay with you. I thought about what you guys do, and there's the husband of one of our employees wrote an article a couple weeks ago, and I thought about your Grassroots group, and so I wanted to read it to you really quick. When I hear about the intense and desperate attack by the unions against the Freedom Foundation, it reminds me of the lessons of history, especially military history. When Hitler sent troops to reoccupy the Rhineland, he was taking a big gamble. It was a serious violation of the Treaty of Versailles. This was a tentative move by Hitler, and it is known to those troops had orders to retreat if they encountered resistance. How little resistance would it have taken? Any action, even token resistance, by the French army would have done it. Would 3 French policemen, arms linked, standing abreast in the middle of the bridge have done it? Possibly. What would have happened if the French had stood their ground then and there? Would the whole course of history have changed? Would Hitler have been discouraged from his ambitions, or at least delayed long enough for the rest of Europe to take action needed so that he could not bring about those ambitions? How many lives might have been saved if people had just listened to Churchill in the 1930s when he warned everyone what was coming instead of deriding him as a warmongering backbencher. People in other parts of the country may look at the fight between the Freedom Foundation and the unions as a regional fight. It isn't. If the Freedom Foundation is successful on the battlefields in which it is currently contending, it will have an impact that reverberates across the country. It may even set in motion events that permanently degrade the ability of the unions to impact politics or continue to enjoy the many benefits in which they currently indulge at taxpayers' expense. And conversely, if the Freedom Foundation is not successful in these regional fights, an emboldened union movement will march on to other conquests throughout the nation. A battle on a single bridge may seem like a small regional fight, but often that regional fight is the fight that wins or prevents a larger war. So what you guys are doing here in Spokane, what we're trying to do at the Freedom Foundation, it matters. It matters, and it's people that want to push back find solace in knowing there's other people that want to push back, because I think in the media especially, you're felt like you're the only one who feels a certain way. So I appreciate what you guys do, and I encourage you to keep pushing back. So thank you very much. If you have any questions about the Freedom Foundation, I'm going to be here for the rest of the night. We are bringing a estate planning class to Spokane in September, so if you're interested in that, let me know. If you'd like information about donating or getting our newsletter, I can take that information as well. So I appreciate giving me the floor tonight, and thank you so much.
Glad you came up.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think most of us are pretty familiar with Tim Ben. And Tim, of course, is in the home child care business and has done Freedom Foundation has just been a wonderful support for him. And we've done a lot of work in Spokane working with these folks to let them know, hey, you don't have to belong to that union. They really felt it was imposed on them, and I had no idea the dues were $60 a month, which is huge for a worker like that. So good work, and I agree with you. We need to be a right to work state, obviously. Okay, this is our open mic time, and so you're just welcome to come on up here, introduce yourselves, not you guys yet, and tell me, just tell us all who you are and why you're talking to us. So come on up, because I know you're out there. Come on, John, you're going to be first.
I'm already getting picked on.
Get used to it.
I know. Well, thank you guys for
John,
having-
excuse me a minute.
My time's done. Thank you, everybody.
John, I need a microphone. Yellow.
That's all right. You just called me yellow and everything. Well, thanks for having me. My name's John Garisco. I'm probably the worst last name to be running for an office because it's spelled G-U-A-R-I-S-C-O. Somehow my Italian relatives love vowels. So when you see it, just think of Crisco oil, Garisco, just put a G in front of it. I'd like to wish how many moms do we have out there? Happy Mother's Day weekend. And enjoy your day. A little bit about me is I'm been here for my whole life, since 1964. And my family grew up here. My grandpa had a cantaloupe farm on Park and Trent. And so they came out here in the early days. And I've got a lovely wife of 28 years and 3 children. They're lovely too. The jury's still out on the little one, but we're still praying for her.
Are you running for an office?
I am. I'm running for county commissioner. They will be going through the appointment process, but I've already filed with the PDC, and I will be running in November 2018. So it's full court press. I've tried to contact all the PCOs at this point, and I'll try to meet with everybody. If you have an opportunity, go to johnforspokane.com, and I got some brochures back there as well, and I'd love to start the conversation. Public safety, economic development, and property and water rights. I'm a little bit of a late bloomer. I was talking to Cecily about, You know, when do you get involved with this stuff? And I'm not trying to offend anybody, but I got involved when I got pissed. I've got property on the Little Spokane drainage. I've had it for 22 years. The government wants to tell me that I can't do anything with my property. I'm pissed. I'm a dog in the fight for you guys. I was just about ready to build an A-frame. I can't. The government has grabbed my land. I'm pissed. So I'm ready to fight for these causes. I'm ready to fight for our property and water rights. And for some reason, our government thinks those are two separate things. And I could not be any more hot about it. And like you said, Ed, in your prayer, let's get fired up. We got to do something about it and get involved now. And I'll publicly apologize for everybody for being a latecomer, but I'm ready to get started. So that's me, John Grisco, County Commissioner. We'll see how the appointment process goes. There's a lot of good people that are running, and that's encouraging too. We need a lot of good people to do this. So I'm looking forward to it. John for Spokane.com. If you have any questions, I'll be here for the rest of the night as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wants to take the mic and say a few words? We have Rob, and then we have this gentleman with initiative. The initiative 1552, right?
Okay.
Rob Chase, Treasurer, Spokane County.
I was going to say that, but thank you, Cecily.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm also, like John Grisco, I'm throwing my hat in the ring for this open seat now that
Shelley,
thank you, has decided to resign, I think effective June 15th, so probably sometime in July, you know, after they send a couple weeks notice out and everything, then the precinct committee officers will get together and pick 3 of us to go interview in front of the county commissioners. And I'm running because, you know, I think I've been a good treasurer. I think I can also be a good county commissioner too. I've, you know, been around for a while now. I moved here during Expo 74. I worked at the Goodyear Tire right across the street from Expo 74. And had a season pass, and I really hadn't planned on staying long, but I've been here for over 40 years now. I just finished running my 32nd Bloomsday. And, you know, if you think about that in 7.5 miles 32 times, that's like running really hard and fast to Ellensburg, you know, from here. So, you know, I'm kind of like the Spokane story. I've got a wide background of a lot of different things, you know. Yeah, I haven't been in one job all the time. So I've got a background in manufacturing, smelting, manufacturing, insurance, banking, mortgages, and but about 20 years ago, I got involved in politics. And like John, I suddenly got angry, and I got involved. And I remember I ran a couple of times. My very first race was against Bob McCaslin Sr. And you know, I think he thought it was kind of cute that I was running against him, you know, as a libertarian. He said, "I'm Mr. Libertarian. How can this upstart come in?" But I met him finally in Olympia, and we became friends. And he said, "Well, you know, Rob, you know, if you're going to do this, you need to build a political resume, and you need to run in a party where you stand a chance of winning." So, you know, I eventually became a precinct committee officer and a district leader, and I worked on a lot of campaigns. I don't think too many people have doorbelled more for others or donated more to others or put up signs for others than I have here too. And I never did it for any money except once, I think, Matt Shea, 2008. So I told Matt, you know, I said, "Well, here's the deal. Don't pay me anything unless you make it through the primary. And then if you make it through the primary, then go back and pay me what you would have paid a campaign manager." And Matt is an honorable man. To his credit, he did. And the nice thing was he gave me a bonus too. And that was important because I was in the mortgage business in 2008, and I really needed the money. So, but I've got a lot of good memories. I've learned a lot from my victories and my defeats too. So I think one of my keys is transparency. Water rights, you know, and roads and safety and all is very important. But I think if you have transparency, then you can see what the solutions are. How can you have solutions for things when you only see part of the picture? It's very opaque. And that's one thing I've encountered at the county. So I had worked towards more transparency, and then you can solve problems. Then you can make honest decisions if you can see more transparency, and that's easier to do as a commissioner than you can as a treasurer. And there's a lot of mysteries at the county that I still haven't solved. I just see part of the puzzle there, and I want to find out more about it. And something I do too, besides running, my other hobby is reading. I read a lot. I read a lot of nonfiction stuff, and I read a lot of economics and other things. I try to read what there is about counties, and most everything is written at the federal level, like global things like armies and wars and treaties and all that, but maybe about 10% is written about at the county level. So it's kind of hard to find things. That's why it's important to have good advisors. I think of the book of Proverbs, it says a wise man has many counselors. So I need people to come up and to tell me, here's a usable solution to this problem from all around, because you have to find the right balance in a lot of things. You have to find the right balance between property rights and conservation. I'd say I'd probably err on the side of property rights, but still you've got to be able to represent everybody across the spectrum, rich and poor, party people, non-party people. And I think one thing I've done good as a treasurer is, I know I'm not the smartest man in the world, but I do hire smart people. And so Mike Volz and Krista Rice and John Christine and all those people have helped to make the treasurer's office, I think, the best treasurer's office in the state. So be thinking of me, praying for me. I want God's will, whatever that is for me. And anyway, I'll turn it back over to Cecily. Thank you.
Thanks. I got to tell you a story about Rob, because he has been one heck of a good treasurer. And I don't know how many of you have noticed that some of the people in elected office in county positions like putting their names on their envelopes, like our county auditor. So everybody sees Vicki Dalton, Vicki Dalton, Vicki Dalton. And the gentleman before Rob and the lady before that person, Skip Chilberg, and I forget the gal's name, did the very same thing. And I just cracked up laughing because Rob just kept using their stationery. He wasn't going to throw it out. Going great. And I do have to tell you that he's reduced the budget in the treasurer's office. He's reduced the staff. They give far better service, and they come in under budget. How many government offices do you know do that? So hats off to Rob, and if he could do that within the county, wow, that'd be pretty darn cool. Now, sorry about the commercial, but I love the names on the envelopes, because cross them off, and and going, that's great. Anybody else have anything to say? Oh, I've got another low battery. Okay, here we go.
Sometime back, we all were exposed to this initiative 1552, which was called Safe Spaces for Women and Children. And what it did was everything but that. Is this initiative 1552 repeals the open bathroom rule. And so we no longer have to worry about our women and children being exposed to same-sex or opposite sex, or those who choose to change their sex for the day, going into the bathroom. And this 1552 will repeal that. It also restores the rights of business owners to maintain the gender-specific restrooms. And it requires public schools to maintain gender-specific facilities also. And so if you have not signed 1552, I have two with me, and I'm sitting in the far corner. And when this is over, I'll be out at that little bar in the back. Please stop. If you are a registered voter in the state of Washington, please stop and sign this 1552. And if you've got some friends, we've got some blank ones back there, and you can take one home and get some signatures on it and send it in. We've got until July to get this. Thank you.
July what? July 1st, guys. So we have till the end of June, and we really need to push this. We didn't make it last initiative time, and it's really shame on us. So get working. Anyone else? Okay, we will go on with the program. Get rid of that. Okay, national issues. There's too much to talk about. So we probably should just say the heck with it, but I did something wrong there. So I like that picture of Comey. So to me, it's so interesting how the Democrats thought Obama should have fired him in October, but now they accuse Trump of firing him because of the Russian connection. And all I'm seeing is the swamp is a heck of a lot deeper than we thought it was. You know, it's just pretty crazy time. So immediately on that, you know, the firing, I get a dearmoveon.org member email, right? I really would love to have a moneyed conservative group do a moveonout.org and let's get rid of these folks because it's just crazy. So Dear Move On member, breaking, Donald Trump just fired FBI Director James Comey, compromising the only semi-credible and somewhat resourced investigation into Trump and his administration's ties to Russia. Trump fired Comey on the advice of Jeff Sessions, which isn't true, who was forced to rescue himself from Russia-focused investigations because he lied under oath about his own conversations with Russian officials, and it goes on. Can you believe, I mean, this is something that we need to understand, is MoveOn.org is on everything, like flies are. And they ask, you know, very, very simple. It's always they're asking for $3, $3, $3. But it's pretty crazy, and we need to be aware that that's happening, and we need to be as active as. Okay, we had the Religious Liberty Executive Order. And, you know, it's being treated like most everything Trump does. Some people like it and some people don't. What it does, it includes broad language that declares that the policy of the executive branch is to vigorously enforce federal laws, robust protections for religious freedoms. It instructs the Internal Revenue Service to not take any adverse action against any individual, house of worship, or other religious organization that endorse or oppose candidates from the pulpit, which is currently outlawed by a provision typically referred to as the Johnson Amendment. So he can suggest that. He cannot change that law or that bill. So it is, you know, he sort of advised them type thing.
So I have a question.
Yeah?
So what does that do to the Hobby Lobby ruling, those kind
Nothing.
of things? Nothing.
Nothing at this point. Third, the order directs federal officials, actually Hobby Lobby won in the Supreme Court case, so, you know, they're basically okay, but, you know. Third, the order directs federal officials, including the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services, so again, it's a direction, it's not a changing of a law, to consider issuing amended regulations that would protect nonprofit groups, so this is what John was talking about, with faith-based objections to providing abortion pills in their insurance coverage. So again, think of that, it's a direction, and asking the Department of Health and Human Services to consider amending regulations that were imposing those mandates. And then fourth, the order tells the Attorney General to issue guidance interpreting religious liberty protections in federal law. So I think we need to call it a step in the right direction, and certainly is bringing a spotlight to the situation, and I think we will be seeing some changes. Okay, last month we talked about cabinet positions, and we still had Sonny Perdue and Alex Acosta who hadn't been confirmed. They have been now, but Robert Lighthizer has not been. He's out of committee, but he's still waiting for full Senate confirmation. We think it will happen next week, but there are people that are against him, and he is definitely needed on the Wilbur Ross team in order to start working on the negotiations with the different trade agreements and things that way. Now, I'm not going to get into this one too much because it's not going to look the same once it gets through the Senate. So it eliminates mandates. The GOP bill would get rid of the Obamacare requirement that people have health care coverage or face a tax penalty. It does allow insurance companies to penalize people who haven't had insurance that all of a sudden say, I need insurance now. They can have higher premiums and things that way, but it's not a mandate by the government imposed with your taxes and that type of thing. It would also eliminate the mandate that employers with at least 50 employees would provide health insurance to their workers. We all know that the free market basically dictates that. I mean, are you going to go work for an employer that doesn't give you insurance? You know, provide insurance, not give it to you? Probably not. So it's, if you're wanting a good base of employees, that's something that you're going to do, but it's not mandated. You aren't being told by the government that this is something that you have to do. It revamps Medicaid funding. And right now, the numbers of people that basically signed up for Obamacare that are Medicaid people is very, very high. And the Obamacare said that it would reimburse the states 90% of those Medicaid premiums. So, you know, it was a good deal for the states. And we had a lot of people just hop on board on that. So under this, the states could either receive a fixed amount of money per Medicaid or enrollee, or receive a block grant for the adults and children on the program. Under the block grant option, states would get a fixed amount of federal funding each year, regardless of the number of participants. Well, you think about that. If you've got a pretty good block grant, and it's a fixed amount, and you could reduce the participants, you're going to be making a little more money than if you were doing the amount per enrollee. And the states do have the ability to require people to work and do other things like that if they're capable, if they're able, in order to get Medicaid. So it could be a way of reducing the numbers of people that are on Medicaid. It allows insurers to charge older folks more. Under Obamacare, the insurers were allowed to charge those in their 50s and 60s 3 times more than, let's say, somebody in their 20s or 30s. This allows them to go up to 5 times more. So, you know, 50s and 60s, hopefully you're pretty well settled. It eliminates the Obamacare taxes. The pre-existing conditions, that one's really pretty crazy, so it's confusing to me. I thought I'd just wait to see how the sausage comes out on that one. And then we had 2 Republicans here in the state of Washington that voted against this. Jamie Herrera Butler, or Butler, or whatever we want to call her, and Dave Reichart. And then Dan Newhouse, who was the GOP-E candidate against Clint Didier, just didn't bother to be there to vote. So we have some pretty, John calls them raunchy, I call them just the kind of Republicans we want to remove from office in the state of Washington. Okay, in statewide issues, we had our Hanford Tunnel collapse. Yeah?
They're saying, oh, look at what's being done to Medicare. Well, I haven't seen anything about Medicare, so do you have any ideas what they're talking about?
They're just putting the onus of administering the Medicaid problems back to the states. And Medicare, I haven't seen
Okay.
anything that they're
I think
actually
they're just trying
doing.
to scare,
It's a scare thing,
scare
yeah.
older people. Okay, thank you.
And hi, Gina. Okay, so we have our Hanford tunnel collapse. Yesterday, a 20-foot section of a tunnel used to store contaminated material collapsed. What the tunnels store are train cars and highly radioactive ignitable wastes. In 1997, the Department of Ecology report indicated that the inspection of the tunnels was not feasible because of the radiation levels that were in excess of 5 rotogens per hour. Now, 5 rads is the annual limit for a U.S. worker, a nuclear worker. So if you're looking at 5 rads an hour, you can understand you aren't going to be sending workers down there to see how the tunnels are doing. So fixing the tunnels are going to be a little interesting. Probably they will just contain the hole. And John put more pictures up. So anyway, there's a picture of the hole. And what I understand is the tunnel is 22 feet tall, and there's 8 feet of dirt on top of it. So you've got 8 feet of dirt falling into a 22-foot depth. So I'm not sure it really filled it all up, but they say that there's no radiation escaping. And I've read from different scientists that they say really the only worry you have is if it's an explosion or a fire, because then that puts the radiation into the air and allows it to be dispersed. And John said there's a picture, and that's a wind, and we don't have to worry about the wind because it isn't blowing around. And we don't need to worry about the wind. Special legislative session. We have Bob McCaslin with us this evening, so I'm not going to talk a whole lot about what's going on in Olympia. I'm going to ask him to come up and fill us in, because I can't really figure it out. And did you know that? Yes, he knew that. Bob McCaslin, 4th District Representative. Yay!
Oh, hold on just a second. I suffer from dry mouth. I always forget to bring my glass of water up here. So basically, a week before last Sunday, we ended our regular session at noon, and we've... Better? Okay. Okay. So we started our first special session. We've been over there for voting one day. Up until yesterday, we were scheduled to go back and vote again on the 17th. That was canceled yesterday. So as far as I know, the Senate Republicans and the House Democrats are still quite a ways apart as far as that goes. And I know that we weren't going to vote on the budget on the 17th, so I guess they thought it was useless for us to be over there. This has been pretty frustrating for me, only that we're usually called 48 hours before if we're going to vote, and so making any plans farther than that is pretty impossible. And I'm not complaining about that. It's just that I'm concerned that our side is holding the line as far as spending goes, and new taxes and things like that. If you look at spending from 1900 to 2000, we have increased our spending in the last 17 years 111% more than we did in the 100 years before that. So anytime we have a budget surplus, which we have right now about $3 billion, none of that is being saved. None of that is being set aside for a rainy day, because everybody thinks that, you know, if we have money, we have to spend it, and I won't do that. Our highest priority deals with the Hearst decision, and property rights and water rights should be one and the same thing. And that is our stance on that as House Republicans. And I would say the Senate Republicans are there too. So we have a bill by Judy Warnick that could solve that, and one by our own Senator Mike Padden that could solve that also. So
what was interesting in Senator Padden's newsletter, he indicated that the Republicans were going to stand firm on Hearst and say, you guys work on Hearst or we're not going to work on the budget type things. So it's really a standoff there. But you know, when Inslee said that Hearst wasn't important, you're going, come on. I mean, obviously it's not important to Seattle, but it's sure important to the rural communities in the state, and there's a lot of us. I wanted to give Bob a chance to drink some water.
And I appreciate that. the probably the most important thing that's going on with this is to make sure that the governor knows that we're serious. And I have to say, for the most part, the Senate Republicans and the House Republicans have stood solid on no new taxes. And at present, the House Democrat budget has a tremendous increase in spending with no named source to spend that money. And it's and I'm forgetting off the top of my head how many billions of dollars. It's like, $8 billion of new spending. But, and of course, their first go-to is taxes.
And they won't vote on the taxes, right?
No, and they will not vote on the taxes. Dino Rossi in the Senate, bless his heart, and I'm serious when I say this, he put it out there. It was his idea. Hey, if you want this, then vote on the taxes. Well, the taxes were so ludicrous. It was kind of one of those things that, like, in the middle of the night negotiations, we'd been able to, but not on a regular Senate floor day. So I thought that was really neat that he did that. So just a couple of personal things in this session. I had the great privilege of sponsoring a school siding bill that would punch a little hole in the Growth Management Act, which was really encouraging. It passed the House very convincingly, and it's interesting. We had a kind of a, I would say, wasn't a super strong bill, but it did help districts who didn't have land to build on within the urban growth boundary. And what the encouraging part of it, thanks to a Democrat of all people on the Environment Committee, came up with a better version of the bill, thanks to a lot of negotiating by Matt Shea, Dave Taylor, and several other members. And so Joe Fitzgibbon, which I never thought I would say, Representative Joe Fitzgibbon, Democrat from the Puget Sound area, is somebody to congratulate, but honestly he is. He really came across for us. We wound up with a better bill going out of the House than we had originally. So went over to the Senate, got a better version in the Senate, came back to the House, and we got even more yes votes. I think it was 85 to 12, which was pretty convincing. Yeah. Then it went to the governor's desk, and here's the ironic part of this. If it wasn't so sad, I would have just laughed. He got a bunch of us on the phone for a telephone conference and said, listen, I'm going to have to veto part of your bill, Representative McCaslin. And I said, oh, let me guess, it must be Section 1. How'd you know that? Because that's what Governor Inslee does. He does things that will help the Puget Sound area, but he has no interest in helping us on this side of the state. So we're left with a couple of choices on this, and we've got some very, very good press, actually, from some liberal sources, which is a huge change, because even they saw the need for it, even though the governor didn't. And so we're left with a few things. The governor already has a bill out. Now, as far as I remember, it's not the governor's role to produce legislation, but he's got one out there. What we'd like to do, I think the best case scenario is to override his veto. I don't know that we have the votes in the Senate to do that, but we're working hard on that. And other possibility, I have a bill ready to go that would bring back all of the good things that he vetoed, plus another few things, and use a little bit different language, but have the same purpose, and send that through. And I'm hoping that Representative Joe Fitzgibbon will be the one that will sponsor it, so the governor will be forced to veto somebody from his own party. Wouldn't that be a hoot? Yeah. And just one last thing, we had another bill that was actually signed by the governor, none of it was vetoed, that would help paraeducators and people in the business arena become school teachers. Go private unions.
Yes.
You know, I think that would be wonderful to do that. So 4 different avenues to do that. Districts would be using their own money, and trust me, as a public school teacher for 31 years, districts have all kinds of money. We're spending 48% of the state budget on public education right now, and yet a lot of that money's not getting into the classrooms to help the kids. And as was said before, a lot of that money goes to the union. And thank goodness people have a choice whether they want to be in it or not. But not a lot of them know it. So there again, great message tonight, by the way. Thank you for that. I don't have a whole lot else.
That's perfect. I was absolutely delighted to see you here. And any
My pleasure.
questions for
Yeah.
Representative McCaslin? Kelly?
Any end in sight, any prediction on when the session will be over?
Well, I learned a long time ago that I'm not a betting man. I would say we're still quite a ways apart at this point, but you never know what will bring the break, so that
I have a question. What
we can
happens, like the budget
actually vote.
right now is over, I mean, the budget we're working on now ends June 30th. So if you don't have a budget passed by June 30th, can we shut the government down?
Well, I wouldn't be against that.
Neither would I.
Not at all.
Is that what happens, though, or
Well,
do they just...
I think there is a date, and I'm not sure exactly what the date is when we would actually have to pass a budget. But, the bottom line is that there's more than enough money, and again, I would love to see a lot of that money put into a surplus account, because there could be hard times ahead. You
never know.
I'm not an economic expert, but I think it would be good to do that. And I'd also love to see government agencies, when they get to the end of their budget cycle and they have money left over, that they don't have to go spend all of it. Having something that wouldn't penalize government agencies from actually keeping some in savings,
Yeah.
and then be able to fund them up to what they saved.
I think we had another
So-
question.
Yes.
Thank you. With the Hearst decision, has there been any talk of maybe getting a judicial solution to it at the Supreme Court of the United States level? Is that a possibility, or is that...
It's a possibility. It's a very expensive endeavor. That's probably the part that would be difficult to do. I think with another Supreme Court justice, if we get another Supreme Court justice pretty soon, there's a good chance that not only we could get enough people involved, that, because I think this kind of attack that we have on our property rights, and our water rights, we're not the only state in the nation that's dealing with that. And in my opinion, we should be forming coalitions with other states and saying, let's fight this together. Let's share the cost.
Over in the corner, Jeff?
Great question, though.
It's advertised that the profit from the state lottery and scratch tickets goes to education. Do you know the percentage that does that?
I don't have a percentage off the top of my head. What was promised when we started doing that, I do know for sure we've never reached that percentage as far as money that actually goes to public education. So. Oh, no kidding. It's a tremendous amount. One of the problems with that is that, as is usual in our state, if we run something that's supposed to make money for good causes, the cost of running that in our government is exorbitant. And that's where a lot of this money is going. A lot of your tax dollars are going into agencies and disappearing.
Rob?
Yeah, have you discussed the 51st State project with Newhouse and McMorris Rogers, and if so, what are their feelings?
I personally have not done that. It's been interesting with Trump being elected. That whole original idea by my father to split the state and have our own state on the east side of the Cascades has taken on a very serious nature. In fact, there's a lot of people in Puget Sound that are afraid. And I think the interesting argument is, they say, well, you're just a huge drain on our economy because, you're taking all this money from our side of the state and we don't see any benefits from that. And both Matt Shea and I say, well, then why don't you just let us go? If we're such a huge burden, let us go. I think probably the funniest, and this was just a riot. One morning I was watching ESPN, just kind of on my way to the before I left the house to go to the Capitol and work for that day. There was my picture on ESPN for a bill that Matt Shea and Dave Taylor and I sponsored that would allow people with concealed carry permits to wear their weapons into public facility district facilities. Okay? Now, the whole idea behind this bill was to help out law enforcement because most law enforcement agencies have a policy that their officers should be able to carry a concealed weapon into these facilities because that's the most apt place for them to meet people they've arrested. And there's a huge, history of that happening. And so our state law permits that, but public facility districts are the ones that make their own special rules. And the message of the bill, although it didn't make it to ESPN, of course, or even to Fox News, was that we want you to obey the state law that allows people to do that. If you don't like that, then change the state law. Don't make your own rules. And so when I watched ESPN that morning, of course, they put our names in alphabetical order, so there my face came up first, McCaslin, then Shea came up next, and then Taylor came up after that. And that it happened on Fox News, too, because it was such a controversial bill. But, of course, they got the wrong message on the bill, and that's not really what it was about. But it was and I didn't think I'd ever wind up on either one of those two stations as a state representative. So, are there any other questions?
Okay, well, thank you so much. It was
Thank
just
you
a
so much. It's
really fun to
it's-
see you here.
Well, it's a real privilege to be able to serve you. So if you have concerns, if you think our office can help you, please reach out. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I want to say something on Hearst. You know, we have our county commissioners saying that and the Stevens County and Pend Oreille County commissioners going together on this water banking idea, but actually they are damaging our chances in Olympia of getting anything done, because if these counties, especially Spokane County, which is one of the larger in the state, comes to a solution, then there's not an onus on the Olympia group to do anything. And I am just really upset with our commissioners for even considering this. We can hang on just a little bit more. Okay, and we talked about 1552. So honestly, guys, if you have a church group or any other thing that you belong to, take one of those blank initiatives. Let's get those signatures in. Spokane County, I really don't have anybody to talk. Is there anything exciting going on in the county other than Shelley resigned and it's going to be effective June 15th, I heard? So then the Republican PCOs have to get together after that to do their appointment meeting, and we'll see how all of that goes. So. Yeah. Right. We're hoping that Larry, our Spokane County prosecutor, gets a federal appointment. Kelly?
And I guess, since Stephanie's not here too, and we have a caveat, if Rob is one of the 3 finalists, then we'll be holding another meeting at that meeting to put forward 3 names in the occurrence that he gets chosen.
Right. Crazy. Okay. So we're going to go to the city of Spokane Valley. Before we go into our little update, I do want you guys to know that there's 5 good present members of the city council whose terms expire. They're all on the November ballot. We have Rod Higgins, who is the mayor right now. Excuse me. He's opposed by a person by the name of Merkel. Caleb Collier, he's opposed by a gal by the name of Brandy Peets. Ed Pace is opposed by Ben Wick. Pam Haley and Mike Munch, I haven't seen any opposition yet, but filing doesn't end until the 19th of May, so we'll see what comes up. Arnie, who ran with Sam Wood last time around, he isn't up for re-election this time, woohoo! And he's here to give us a little intro and Spokane Valley update.
Thank you. It's a privilege to be here. I used to be on Tuesday night, and there's a lot of Wednesday nights I can't make it either. Well, first of all, what a novel idea of having some of your surplus put aside or have a little bit of budget capability and reserve. The city of Spokane Valley keeps 50% of their general fund budget in reserve, so we could run a half a year and never tax a dime out of anybody.
Woohoo!
Then we have other reserves for other projects, whether it be road preservation or capital projects or whatever. The item that most people want to talk about is the City Hall, since it's right down the road here. So let me give you a few facts quickly on that. We've got a 14.16 budget or something like that, less than 14.2. We're on or under budget. Novel. We expect to be moving in September. We're ahead of schedule. We'll probably be moving in August. So be looking for a general open house on a Saturday for 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 10 hours, whatever it takes, for the thousands of people that are going to want to see that building. They call it a Taj Mahal, and I say this, we took and put a budget out to the architects. They designed us a building, the staff went through it, all the council had input. We took all the Taj out of it, and we ended up with a really nice $14.2 million building. It's going to stand there for over 100 years. We've got expansion in it so that we don't have to reconstruct and build a new one in 30 years from now. We're a contract city. How did we pay for it? About half of it in cash. Again, novel idea, pay what you're going to buy. And the balance of it was on a loan, just like you would do a mortgage. So that loan, which is called bonds in municipal speak, is less money per year than what we pay for lease. $39,000 less per year. So in 30 years, we've saved our citizens $1.1 million just straight with the rate of rent being the same for 30 years, which we all know won't happen. In fact, it already was changing rapidly as we put this together. If it had a 2% increase per year for 30 years, that's $7.5 million we've saved our citizens, and we'll have a beautiful building when we're done that we can all be proud of and have used it for 30 years by then.
Super.
Are there any questions on that before I move on? I mean, I've heard numbers in the 30 million range and 25 million range, and you name it, we've heard it, but it's 14.2 minus. Yes, Gary.
I assume that the press is reporting your side of the story
Well, they haven't screwed that one up too badly, Gary, so far, but there's more to come when we open up, and we'll see. I might have some side contact there to control some of that so that it's actually the real story. Other things really quickly. It's a novel thing to have a surplus, and it's kind of an interesting thing that Bob just said, that the state has $3 billion. We are going to have $3 million plus surplus for 2015. And I asked the CAPER meeting the other night, what do you do with surpluses? You know, realize surpluses are extra money. Now, we've decided as a council, by policy, we put that into a capital reserve fund. And so it's one-time money, it's one-time projects. Part of the money for the city hall was because of some surpluses. Where did the surpluses come from? It came from policy in the valley that encouraged businesses to stay here, to expand here, give them an opportunity to bring new businesses in. On that light, we have 2 new manufacturers coming. I will not say who they are because we've not been authorized to disclose, but they will be here this year. Both seem to want to break ground in the next couple of months, and they're bringing over 400 high-pay manufacturer jobs. They're national companies.
Great.
That's part of our northeast corner expansion of our industrial area. We have 600 acres there, and when the word gets out, the infrastructure is going in right now as we speak. We're financing the roads. Spokane County said if you're going to have those roads tore up, we want to put sewer in, so amen, thank you. So we're doing this together, and those bids came in under engineer's estimate and will be on time and on schedule. So, you know, government doesn't have to be negative. The state, if they would come take a lesson from Spokane Valley, would probably end up doing very well, because we're in very good condition in this valley, and we will go our 9th year without raising property taxes. Now, you don't see your property taxes staying even. Everybody else is taking raises, but Spokane Valley for 9 years has not taken its automatic 1%. And it won't happen this year either. So
Super.
We appreciate your support when you comment to us. We appreciate it when we're doing things wrong or you think we are. Get the facts. We want to talk to you. We're not hiding from anything. Transparency is the name of the game, and that's why we do everything in the public. Thanks.
Thank you. So keep track of those names up there, not the opposed by, but the other ones, and that's who you need to be voting for. So I want to invite the other council members that are here this evening to come on up, say a few words. Caleb, I have your picture and things, and I wanted to let everybody know that Caleb's campaign kickoff is coming up here, and his opponent, that Brandy Peets I told you about, remember a couple months ago when we did the resistance program and we talked about Indivisible? She is a very active member of Indivisible. Stay in the box.
Stay in the box. All right. Am I in the box?
You're good.
Okay.
Caleb.
As that says, I am Caleb Collier. Jonathan is my first name. I've gone by my middle name since since I was born. As Cecily was saying, my opponent is Brandy Peets. Now she's rather interesting. She's a member of the Citizen Advisory Board, is an active member of Indivisible, which for those of you who do not know, it's a very progressive organization. They use aggressive tactics, and it's not something I don't think we want to see in Spokane Valley or the county for that matter. She recently was endorsed by Ben Stuckert, so that should tell us quite a bit. But enough about her. Let's get to me. I am a public servant. I am not a government official. I really believe in serving the public. I was a Marine for 4 years. I worked for AMR, the ambulance company in Spokane County, for about 7 years. Right now I'm a postman, addressing you. It is an open shop, and so I am not part of the union. So I do not pay those dues. Let's see, going back to the public service, at a recent policy that we were considering at Spokane Valley, we had some angry citizens, and we ended up with nearly 450 emails opposing what was going to happen, and I wrote every single one of those people back individually. I didn't paste and cut. I wrote every single one of them, and that took a long time. But that's really who I am as a politician here. So I'm not the most polished. I've been doing this for about a year, but I truly believe in liberty. I believe in freedom, and if you feel like I do, I'm asking for support. I've never ran a campaign, so I can use donations, I can use volunteers, whatever anybody wants to do to really help me retain my seat. And as this says, I'm having my kickoff at B2N Brewery, which is just north of the freeway on Argonne, right over there by the McDonald's and Caruso Sandwiches. So I hope to see you all there, and is there any questions for me?
Great, so write it down on your purple pieces of paper and be there on June 1st, guys. Ed, would you like to come say a few things? I don't have a picture of Ed, so I'll just let you look at him.
There he is.
All right, thank you. So I'm coming to the end of my four-year term, first four-year term, and when I ran 4 years ago, I made several promises. One of them was that I would do this for only 1 or 2 terms. I believe in term limits. I believe we all ought to take our turn. There isn't a special class of governing people. We're just regular folks that do our hitch, do our turn in the barrel, and then we're done. So I made a promise that I would do this for 1 or 2 terms, so I'm asking for one more, I'm asking to serve you for 1 more term. I also made a promise that as soon as the election was over, I would start looking for my replacement. And I did. I worked hard at that. And but what I mean by my replacement is somebody who feels the same way, somebody who's a Grassroots movie night kind of person, a Tea Party patriot, a Ron Paul kind of person. And it's really hard to find folks to run. The other promise I made was I took a no new tax, no tax increase pledge, and I stuck with it. The guy running against me has voted, is on record for arguing for and voting for increasing taxes. And not only have I not voted for increasing taxes, but I also made a motion that we decrease spending by 1%. Or I was part of that motion. And then I made a motion myself that we decrease property taxes 1%. It didn't pass, but that's where my heart is. You heard Caleb talk. Caleb and I talked quite a bit about about the governing the city. So does Sam Wood up there and Arnie. And I want to just tell you what I know that Caleb and I are all about. Article 1 of the state constitution, Section 1, political power. All political power is inherent in the people, and governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed and are established to protect and maintain individual rights. And that's what we do. We're an advocate for the people we represent, not just for city jurisdiction issues, but things that come from the county or the state that affect us. So some of us are working really hard advocating with the school district and the health board for the right of parents to choose whether or not to vaccinate their kids. We're advocates for, on behalf of our citizens, for gun rights, for right to work. I've made a lot of people mad for trying to put right to work on our city agenda. Worked with the folks at the Freedom Foundation a lot. A couple of us have. And so that's what we do. So you might say, well, what about the regular city stuff like streets and roads? Well, that's 90% of the work. That's mostly what we do. And I'll give you a couple examples there. Some of us worked really hard to get Sam Wood elected. And once he took office, Sam and I started working on one of his campaign promises, which was reducing regulations, making life easier for businesses. Because really what we're all about is lower taxes, less government, and more freedom. Matt Shea's freedom agenda. So Sam and I started meeting every Wednesday. We didn't meet today, but we meet every Wednesday, and we took we have a binder with the significant part of the Spokane Valley Municipal Code, and we go through it line by line and with a red pen and say, oh, that's bullshit, and we'll cross it out, or that one's okay, we'll leave it. And we've actually had an impact on the comprehensive plan that we just put into effect, the new comprehensive plan, which makes it our city much more business friendly than it has been. We've accomplished things like we got rid of the landscape requirement in industrial zones. We're the latest one that we've given to latest section that we've marked up and have given to our deputy city manager is the sign ordinances, and we're trying to really simplify that and cut them back.
Super.
So that's what we do. We're responsive to the citizens. I'm getting my phone number out all the time for people to call me and talk about their issues with the city. And if you want to write it down, it's 570-4394. Reelectedpace.com is my website. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Rod isn't here, Mike isn't here, City of Spokane. The only thing I'd really like to do is see if the City of Spokane Valley could, just sort of move over and incorporate the City of Spokane and would have everything fixed. Just thought you'd like to know that this Center of Justice is, all those groups there are suing or have a complaint against Respect Washington, Vicki Dalton, and all that kind of stuff over trying to keep the initiative that we signed as far as keeping the sanctuary city initiative that we got a couple years ago that they gave us so much trouble with. We couldn't get it on the ballot right away, but we could put it on this ballot, so now they're doing this to try to keep it off the ballot also. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I really believe that they technically had enough signatures to get on the ballot in 16, but there were enough disputes and denials with those disputed signatures, and it was put off to 17. Envision Spokane, that's just a little bit about the Center of Justice as far as what they're claiming in that lawsuit, that, it's just invalid, it's a bunch of garbage, they don't like it, keep it off the ballot kind of thing. Envision Spokane, we talked about that last month, is back. And it is really, it's worse than it really was 8-9 years ago when John and I first got involved in all of this. You're just going, why don't these people go away? But it's something to be aware of. And that second bullet, it shall be unlawful within the city of Spokane to transport coal or crude oil by rail. They can't do that. They have no jurisdiction whatsoever over the rails. But, you know, it's just a waste of time. It's a waste of money. And I don't know. They just spend too much time doing nothing. So we're going to talk about the surveillance state tonight. And want you to know that there are over 60 million surveillance cameras in North America, up from a little over 30 million in 2012. So big increase. These 60 million cameras gather over 4 billion hours of footage each and every week. I mean, think about that. And it's estimated that you are caught on camera more than 75 times daily. And so you sort of start thinking about, well, how could that be? But there's home surveillance cameras, there's gas stations, traffic cameras, public transportation, parking garages, lobbies, elevators, you know, just on and on and on. And these cameras are all over the place. So just think about the locations you visit every day and recognize that you do not have much privacy anymore. Now, I think we all realize that our world just changed very, very abruptly September 11th, 2001. And looking back on that day, I think many of us can agree that we overreacted. In a lot of ways, 9/11 just gave certain agendas a pathway for being implemented, and they took advantage of it. We didn't want an attack like this to happen again. We wanted revenge against those who we told us were responsible, and very few level-headed voices were listened to. We gave up many of our liberties in exchange for security, and now we sort of sit back and wonder where it's all going to lead to. This statement that they have up there, you have nothing to fear if you have nothing to hide, justifies why so many feel it's okay to be collecting massive amounts of data on American citizens. Why object if you have nothing to hide? And that's basically the attitude. So the surveillance state is pretty darn interesting. The picture before was of the Utah data center. That's a very small portion of it. This thing is huge. It's massive. And this is what they basically collect from citizens. Website visits, internet searches, phone calls, Skype calls, emails, text messages, credit card information, financial information, legal documents, travel documents, health records. All of that goes into this Utah data center. And from that, they basically are supposed to decide, you know, who's a terrorist, who isn't, who's doing something, but it's all there and it can all be used. Now, we're told that they have to have FISA warrants and things that way in order to pull this information out of the data center. So the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which allows physical and electronic surveillance and collection of foreign intelligent information. That's what it was supposed to be. Then in 2000, that was passed in 1978. It was a Ted Kennedy bill, and it's been amended numerous times. In 2002, we decided that foreign intelligence information, we decided we could do the warrantless domestic wiretapping, so you didn't need a warrant to start tapping domestically. And but for people that you expected had something to do within the foreign intelligence community. So they still were supposed to only target those kinds of people, but what we've learned is that can be expanded. So foreign intelligence information is defined as information necessary to protect the U.S. against actual or potential grave attack, sabotage, or international terrorism. So I guess you can make a case for most anything under that. The Surveillance Act of 2008, a lot more amendments there, and as more and more of this all came to light, pressure was put on Congress to overhaul the act. And so in 2015, we passed what was called the USA Freedom Act. And I think if you remember, Kathy McMorris and those were, you know, just heralding it as being a wonderful thing, and they were cutting, you know, they were really going to clamp down on this surveillance. And it technically requires the government to use standard court procedures to gather data regarding suspicious activities. But looking at the size of that data center, I don't think there's any intention of cutting back at all. And when you look at what they're collecting, you're going, how can that be? And that Freedom Act didn't repeal the Patriot Act, and some provisions of what they passed are not scheduled to expire for years down the road. So it was really one of those things that you're just going, it sounded good. It was something that was supposed to calm us down, because of course Edwin Snowden was letting us know that, hey guys, our government is out of control. So on domestic spying, I think that Judge Napolitano can explain this a little better than I can, and so we will listen to the judge for just a second.
Welcome to my chambers. Last weekend, President Donald Trump interrupted an interview with CBS News to say that the problem of spying on American citizens is the #1 issue in the country today, and we need to, quote, find whatever the hell is happening, close quote, out before things get worse. At about the same time that he said that, the NSA, America's 60,000-person strong domestic spying agency, announced it would be pulling back on one of the tools that it uses to surveil the private conversations of American citizens without a search warrant. What's going on here? What's going on here is the realization that in May of 2017, the American public is the most surveilled and spied on of any group of people by its own government in the history of the world. And all of this has happened right under our noses. The spying apparatus, the NSA, has its own secret court that it can go to. And that court issues warrants for spying upon 99% of the times that the NSA requests them. But beyond that, the NSA has the ability to go behind the back of the court. And it does do that. And it listens to every conversation. It doesn't have the time to listen to it. It captures every conversation and every keystroke and every piece of data that goes over fiber optic cables in the United States, and has been doing so since 2005. Do we really want a society in which the government surveils everything that we do? Isn't it time we had a debate about what government does to us and what government does in our name? Well, that time is coming, because the section of the FISA law that the NSA said they're going to pull back from is about to expire. And Congress will be engaged in a debate about whether or not that section should be extended. Should the government be able to listen to everything we say and read everything we write, or should it be forced to focus on bad people, people as to whom it has suspicion, people who are engaged in wrongdoing, and leave the rest of us alone? That's the decision the country will be making this fall. Where do you stand on that? Welcome to my chambers. Fight the good fight.
So that's pretty interesting. And like he says, that part of FISA is coming up in the fall, and you really need to read up on it, know what they need to end, and get with your congresswoman and let her know that this has got to stop, because she hasn't been good as far as some of the other things, you know, that she's voted on. She just doesn't quite get the constitutionality of the Fourth Amendment. So our Fourth Amendment, I'm going to read it. The right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, and no warrant shall issue, but upon probable cause supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the persons or things to be seized. Our Fourth Amendment has been seriously violated. I'm not sure how we can get back that level of privacy that we expect. We gave so much away in the name of a perceived security and in so much convenience with all our electronic stuff that it's going to be pretty darn interesting. You know, about a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, we did a thing on smart meters, and people were all upset about the data that the electric companies were going to be able to gather. I want you to know that your refrigerator can tell you when you're low on milk and that kind of thing. So, I mean, we are wired, and I don't know, I think we just need to drop out of the whole wire thing. So anyway, this is a very short movie because I knew we were going to be long with our speakers and things that way. But when you read what, that says, apathy and ignorance will only lead to further deterioration of our rights to privacy. Insidious security breaches will continue until the public becomes more aware and vocal in their disapproval. And so guys, it is up to us to really be aware of what this is and try to get our laws back to the way they were before 2001.
You might have bought the phone, but whoever hacked it, they're the one who owns it. Any device that's on here, you can operate independently.
So it's true you can get into the phone and turn the camera off?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is there a way you can tell if your phone's been hacked?
Perhaps the most terrifying thing is, if your phone had been hacked, you would never know.
This week on Vice, the inside story of America's surveillance program.
I'm going to be detaching the camera, the devices that you paid for, watch you on our behalf.
It seems like technology allows almost anyone to spy on almost anyone.
Even if you trust the government today, what happens when it changes? Well, eventually, we get an individual who says, you know what? Let's flip that switch.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you for meeting us today here at the storied Hotel Metropole in Moscow. I say storied because for the longest time it was the designated hotel where foreigners were allowed to stay, and it was rumored that every room was bugged.
I would definitely presume that in any world capital or in a major business hotel, if the hotel rooms aren't pre-wired for surveillance, they can be wired almost immediately.
For the last 3 years, a controversy has raged about the U.S. government's surveillance of its own people. The terrorist attack last December in San Bernardino, California, brought this debate to a tipping point.
14 people are dead and 21 people have been injured after a married couple opened fire at the Inland Regional Center in San Bernardino.
A judge is ordering Apple to help the FBI break into a cell phone used by one of the San Bernardino shooters.
Apple is saying, look, this is something that no court can order us to do.
What is at stake here is, can the government compel Apple to write software that we believe would make hundreds of millions of customers vulnerable around the world?
If it is possible to make an impenetrable device, how do we solve or disrupt a terrorist plot?
But according to the most famous whistleblower in the world, The government already had this capability.
The FBI expert worked, and Apple has the exclusive tech companies doing this. Respectfully, that's horseshit.
And as it turned out, Snowden was proved right, because the FBI was able to crack the iPhone without Apple's help. Now, Edward Snowden remains a polarizing figure in American politics, because on one side, he's considered a hero on the level of Woodward and Bernstein, who broke the Watergate scandal, but on the other, he's considered a traitor who jeopardized American intelligence and security around the world.
A traitor to the United States. These records were spread about publicly by Edward Snowden intentionally, recklessly, and I might say illegally.
So we went to Moscow to speak to this controversial figure about the state of surveillance in America today. So NSA, CIA, FBI, can they get into my phone?
Yes.
Can they get into my laptop?
Absolutely.
iPad?
Anything, as long as they can dedicate people, money, and time to the target, they can get in.
And what kind of information can they get from my phone, for example?
Everything in your contacts list, every SMS message that you use, every place that's ever been, where the phone is physically located, even if you've got GPS disabled because they can see which wireless access points are near you. Every part of a private life today is found on someone's phone. We used to say a man's home is his castle. Today, a man's phone is his castle.
My question to you is, why don't more people care? Because we've gone from Cold War, pre-9/11, to effectively a police state that's watching your every move. And everyone went, why?
Part of it is the fact that it happened invisibly. If a politician had said, we want to watch everybody in the country, people would have been up in arms about it. In the wake of September 11th, the Vice President of the United States, Dick Cheney, and his personal lawyer, David Addington, conspired with a number of top-level officials in the NSA and other agencies to change not only what they considered to be the legal restraints, but actually the culture of surveillance in the intelligence community. They moved from the exceptional surveillance to the surveillance of everyone. Technology has changed. Instead of sending people to follow you, we use the devices that you paid for, the services and the systems that surround you invisibly every day, to watch you on our behalf. Metadata is the fact that a communication occurred.
So I called you.
You called me, when you called me, where you called me from. This information is the same thing that's produced when a private investigator follows you around all day. They can't sit close enough to you in every cafe to hear every word you're saying, but they can be close enough to know when you left your house, what the license plate of the car you were driving with, where you went, who you sat with, how long you were there, when you left, where you went after that. That's metadata.
Now, all of this metadata, it turns out, is actually remarkably easy to get at. In fact, you don't even have to hack the phone at all. All you need is technology that is readily available called an IMSI catcher that can intercept your phone's metadata remotely.
Every phone has what's called an IMSI, which is actually for the SIM card. That's your subscriber information, what your name is, what your phone number is. All of our devices, as they travel throughout the day, are constantly broadcasting in sort of this radio orchestra. IMSI catchers masquerade as the legitimate cell phone tower. So when you were saying, hey, cell phone tower, can you hear me? Instead, a man in the middle, somebody with an IMSI catcher in the trunk of their car, in a briefcase, in their office, has it send a louder signal back to you than the cell phone tower and say, I'm the cell phone tower.
Now, this sounds pretty complex. How hard is it to make or buy an IMSI catcher?
It's incredibly easy. You buy these things off the shelf. Every police department in the United States seems to be buying these things nowadays.
Now, the use of IMSI catchers by police recently caused international headlines when a newspaper in Norway attempted to track the amount of IMSI catchers in Oslo and actually found so many that they questioned if their tracker was working properly. After hiring a cybersecurity firm, they discovered that not only were they indeed correct, but that these devices were actually being used to spy on their own government facilities.
In 5 places in Oslo, the measurement was so serious that I could say with a high probability that there was IMSI catchers The most clear signs was in the area of the Prime Minister's office and the Ministry of Defense. We also got alerts up in the embassy's area and in front of the Parliament.
And while the police initially denied using IMSI catchers extensively, in the face of overwhelming evidence, they were eventually forced to admit it.
The police stated that we are using IMSI catcher at minimum once a week. And that was the first time ever that the police had gone out and stated how often they were using these kinds of equipment. In all the areas that we detected signals, thousands of people are strolling by every day. So I think that's some of the problem with these kinds of technology, because you're looking for one number, but you're in the same phase, you're collecting hundreds of numbers.
Now, this technology is being used by police forces all over the world. In fact, in New York City alone, IMSI catchers have been used more than 1,000 times by police since 2008. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, as they're now being used all around us all the time.
There's a joint CIA-NSA program called, appropriately enough, Shenanigans. Shenanigans was a project to mount on airplanes an IMSI catcher and fly it around the city. They can tell when you've traveled, they can tell when you move, and this all happens without warrants.
Right.
Shenanigans was happening in Yemen. That's where it was being tested. And you go, well, look, this is being used to aim missiles at terrorists. I'm okay with that. But these programs have a disturbing frequency, a tendency to move from war front to home front.
Right.
And within 6 months of Shenanigans being reported, the Wall Street Journal reported that the same technology was now being used domestically inside the United States. The FBI has a specific aviation unit that's flying around cities, and frequently they're monitoring protesters rather than violent criminals. The Black Lives Matter protests in Baltimore, the FBI was flying surveillance over the protesters.
Now, this has been cause for alarm because modern surveillance technologies are already being used by oppressive regimes to suppress government opposition.
Since 2011, Bahrain has witnessed some of the largest protests in its history. There are thousands of protesters taking to the streets who are demanding more democratic reforms and a change in regime.
Ala Shahabi is a Bahraini activist who found herself the target of government surveillance.
In 2012, I was briefly arrested. Immediately after I was released, I received a string of 4 or 5 emails that were very suspicious to me. I suspected that this was a cyber attack, so I immediately sent the suspicious emails to my colleague Morgan at Citizen Lab. It actually turned out that this spyware was produced and operated by a British-German company called Finfisher. This is a company that specializes in producing hacking software, and it claims that it sells them to government regimes. So that immediately fitted with my suspicion that this was the Bahraini regime. The spyware is capable of switching your microphone on, your camera. It's capable of logging every single thing that you type. There are a handful of key companies in Europe that are openly marketing, promoting, and selling these tools in arms exhibitions in European capitals. They are not being used in the name of tackling terrorism. They are being used to keep these regimes in place and in power.
Now, to see exactly what type of information a hacked phone can yield, we contacted the same hacker who uncovered the Bahraini scandal and asked him to hack one of our own reporters, using the same type of software that targeted Ala Shahabi's. We were able to completely commandeer Ben's phone, and he never knew it. So Ben was in Pakistan doing a shoot on polio. So you hacked his phone and you figured out who he called.
Right, and so I mean, what we've got here is I can see, you know, who he's calling and when he called them and how long the calls were. We can actually record his calls. Wow. So let's have a listen to them.
It was Urengi where we were 2 days ago. I think someone pulled up in a tuk-tuk and there was a bomb on the tuk-tuk and it went off. I think killed a doctor and maybe someone else. It was targeting the police there.
This will also keep a list of Ben's web browsing history. And so, for instance, you can see here he's Google searching for BBC. You can see news articles that he's writing, checking his Twitter. It's sort of like reading someone's mind because you can sort of see what they're thinking while they're on the internet. So we've been location tracking Ben. You can even get it to animate, and so it will show where Ben is at various sort of times. You can see him traveling around the city there, and you can tell exactly where he is, which is obviously, in terms of keeping tabs on someone, a highly desirable thing. about anything that the phone can do, right? Like once you've actually installed this malicious software on the phone, then it's simply a matter of activating the phone's capabilities. So I mean, the phone has a camera, right? Well, now we can turn on the camera.
What are these ambient recordings?
Yeah, so the ambient recording is kind of the invisible microphone, the real sort of spy stuff.
Like so many hours, sometimes go for days also. We get me hungry, thirsty, without water, without food.
So he's interviewing a Gitmo detainee, a former Gitmo detainee. So I guess when you talk about protecting journalists, protecting your source is a big issue.
Can you be said to be practicing journalism in a traditional sense if you can't guarantee source protection? You may be sort of actively endangering their livelihood, welfare, and life.
Now with software like this and the other more commercially available software, it seems like technology allows almost anyone to spy on almost anyone.
We live in a golden age of convenience enabled by technology. And so that means that, you know, you and I can be on other sides of the planet and we can have a conversation in real time for no money. Technology has enabled convenience and communication, but also convenience and surveillance.
Now this so-called golden age of technology has essentially made it possible for anyone to spy on anyone else. It begs the question, can people, for example journalists, ever go dark? Is that even possible now with these new advancements? How do we go black?
Well, so going black is a pretty big ask. For me, for example, I really know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But if the NSA wants to pop my box, you know, they're totally going to do it. But if you know you're actively under threat, if you know your phone has been hacked, these are ways that you can ensure that your phone works for you rather than working for somebody else. You might have bought the phone, but whoever hacked it, they're the one who owns it.
That's because third parties can actually turn on your phone's microphones and cameras without you knowing it.
Any device that's on here, you can operate independently.
So it's true you can get into the phone and turn the camera on?
Yeah, absolutely. So you would turn this guy on, and you'll just heat that guy until the solder's molten. I'm going to be detaching the ribbon cables that are connecting the camera. As a surface mount device, you'll be able to just pull it off like that.
So this is the camera. What's that?
This is the other camera. You got two cameras in your phone. You got your front-facing camera for sort of the selfies, and you got your rear-facing camera. I think this one has a multi-microphone array, which is going to be this guy, and this guy.
But if you take out the microphones, then how do you use it as a phone?
You would add your own external microphone. For example, the iPod-type earbuds that have the mic integrated on the lanyard.
Is there a way you can tell if your phone's been hacked?
Perhaps the most terrifying thing is if your phone had been hacked, you would never know.
And as Vice News reporter Jason Leopold found, surveillance has become so ubiquitous that even the government agencies responsible for policing it are not secure. You got a FOIA request recently in the mail that's causing quite a stir.
The way that this all surfaced, Dianne Feinstein, she made this extraordinary floor speech.
As the head of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Feinstein delivered some shocking allegations.
On 2 occasions, CIA personnel electronically removed committee access to CIA documents.
She said that the CIA had hacked into Senate computers while these staffers who worked for her were writing a report about the CIA's torture program. John Brennan, the director of the CIA, said that is preposterous. Our only way to look deeper into it was to file a Freedom of Information Act request. So these documents absolutely backed up everything that Dianne Feinstein said. What's most interesting, though, what I would call a smoking gun, John Brennan wrote a letter, and he said that the CIA staff had improperly accessed your computers. But John Brennan never sent this letter to Dianne Feinstein. They said that this letter was mistakenly turned over to us.
Right.
It was an accident, and it actually should not have been released to us, and they asked us not to post it.
Because it's embarrassing.
Completely embarrassing for them. And we declined that request because there's no national security concerns in this letter. This is simply something that John Brennan did not want the public to see after making all of these statements about what the CIA did not do.
We now know that the CIA officers were, in fact, spying on the committee charged with keeping them in line. So he spoke to one of those committee members, Senator Ron Wyden, about the letter that Brennan never meant to send.
This will be the first time I've ever said this publicly. My sense is there were clearly people at the CIA who understood that what Mr. Brennan had done was flat out wrong, and they drafted an apology letter. And yet, Mr. Brennan was just unwilling to publicly acknowledge wrongdoing. This is basically rewriting the law. We are the agency that is required by law to conduct vigorous oversight over the CIA. We can't do vigorous oversight over the agency if the agency we're supposed to be overseeing is in fact secretly searching our files.
Now, Senator Wyden has become a leader in attempting to rein in our intelligence community.
Director Clapper, I want to ask you...
Senator Ron Wyden said, is the NSA collecting any kind of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans? And James Clapper sort of scratched his head.
No, sir.
And he said, no.
It does not.
They do not.
Not wittingly.
The most senior intelligence official in the United States of America raised his hand and swore an oath to tell the truth to Congress, and he lied on camera. He wasn't charged, despite the fact that that's a felony. He didn't even lose his job. He's still doing the same thing today. Within a few months, he admitted that he lied. He said his answer was too cute by half, and the least untruthful statement that he felt he could have made at the time.
My view is that if you're going to protect the American people, you've got to embed those protections into law. And we, of course, have been very concerned about with what I call secret law.
And at the heart of that secret law is FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which authorized secret courts to greenlight domestic spying programs.
The government persuaded the court to say it was okay to collect metadata. When you read the fundamental law, you didn't hear anything about metadata and collecting millions of records on law-abiding people. That was all done in secret. And in fact, I went to the floor of the Senate and I warned that when the American people found out how that law had been secretly interpreted, they would be very angry. And that, in fact, was the case.
Now, public anger hasn't been enough to end many of these programs. But increasingly, the question isn't whether or not they can be justified under law, but whether they're actually effective in the first place.
Recently, there were attacks in Paris. What happens when you have a terrorist attack like that within security agencies, the NSA, for example?
I was working at the NSA during the Boston Marathon bombings investigation. And as it was playing on the news, myself and colleagues were in the cafeteria, and we turned to each other and said, I'll bet you anything we already knew about these guys in the databases. And in Paris, I'm certain that the same conversation happened. And this is really the legacy of mass surveillance, is the fact that when you're watching everyone, you know who these individuals are. They're in the banks. You had the information you needed to stop, to prevent even the worst atrocities. But the problem is when you cast the net too wide, when you're collecting everything, you understand nothing. We know for a fact that it is not effective for stopping terrorist attacks, and it never has been. The White House appointed 2 independent commissions in the wake of my disclosures in 2013 to review mass surveillance programs and go, all right, do these have value? Should they be changed? Should they be reformed? They looked at the evidence, the classified evidence, and they found, wow, despite the fact that this has been going on since 2001, it had never stopped a single terrorist attack in the United States. And that's after monitoring the phone calls of everyone in the country.
So that's a huge point. So 2 independent commissions started by the White House said mass surveillance has not stopped a terrorist attack.
And both of them found that these programs should be ended. And then they came up with 42 different points for reform that they recommended should happen to restrict the use of these powers. The last time that I saw a review of this, the president only adopted 3 of the 42 points.
Why?
Because they would limit the exercise of executive power. This is something that you have to understand is not about this president. It's about the presidency. It's clear that the public opposes a majority of these policies. And yet politicians, because the word terrorism has evolved, they can't justify being the one to stand up and mount the vote because they know there will be another terrorist attack.
Because if they say no, we're gonna stop doing this, and then there's a terrorist attack, they get painted with that brush.
They know they'll be blamed by their political opponents, and they're right. Of course their political opponents will do this. It's the easiest thing in the world to do. And unfortunately, it's quite effective because we live in a time where the politics of fear are the most persuasive thing on the table.
Now, while the debate over surveillance continues to rage here in the U.S., Edward Snowden remains a fugitive for his revelations about the NSA, and he had a cautionary statement about what's at stake.
When the world was first introduced to you, you made a statement about turnkey tyranny. What did you mean by that?
It means that even if you trust the government today, what happens when it changes? And in our democracy, we're never more than 8 years away from a total change of government. Suddenly, everybody is vulnerable to this individual, and the systems are already in place. What happens tomorrow, in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years, when eventually we get an individual who says, you know what? Let's flip that switch and use the absolute full extent of our technical capabilities to ensure the political stability of this new administration. When we think about the future and where we go from here, the question is, are we going to change and enter sort of a quantified world where everywhere you've been, everyone you talk to, it's indexed, it's analyzed, it's stored, and it's used maybe against you?
Within our technologies here, we have our license plate reader system, which can capture dozens of license plates in a matter of a second.
Or will we recognize the danger of that and embrace the fact that people should have space to make mistakes without judgment, to have sort of the unconsidered thought or conversation with your friend? But if that was recorded in a database where, now you say, I think Donald Trump should be kicked off a cliff, and Donald Trump becomes president someday, sure, and everybody who said that ends up getting thrown off a cliff. That's a very dangerous world. And I think this really is the question that our political structures are not yet comfortable even discussing. But whether they like it or not, it's a world that's coming, and we're going to have to confront.
So, I think Edward Snowden, in my opinion, did a lot to let us understand what was going on and the extent of the surveillance that we have. And, I think that is ironic that we charge Snowden with spying because he told everyone that they're being spied upon. Pretty crazy. In my opinion, I classify Snowden as a patriot. I know some of you disagree with me, but I vote patriot because I really think he's done a lot. But if we want our Fourth Amendment rights, if we want our privacy, we need to be the ones that speak up and take it back as much as we can. So that is our program. I don't know what our next movie night will be, but we'll do something. And we do like contributions, at least to cover our constant contact bill, to mail you all emails and things that way. So the little jars are around. I want to thank Laura for coming all the way up here to share with us. And all of you for being here. And thank you very much, and good night.